Welcome, everybody, back here on Segal Talks at the Martini Segal Theater Center at the Graduate Center, CUNY City University in Midtown Manhattan. And we are restarting our series of talks on theater and performance during the time of Corona. From March on, we had 90 sessions with 150 artists from almost 50 countries focusing on how artists think, how do they work, what is in their mind during this unprecedented time we are all experiencing right now. And after a break, now we are back focusing still, of course, on the ongoing catastrophe, that crisis or reality is far stranger than any fiction movie we have seen, and where we know there's a good ending on a Netflix series. At the moment, we don't know. There's still uncertainty. So we are looking at new ways that will express what has changed. Things have changed already, and theater and performance will be different. And we are trying to evaluate the moment. Nobody knows really what will happen, but I think while discussing, while talking, while listening, perhaps it will help to see what is emerging. Yesterday we had the great theater historian Marvin Carlson with us as a start. Marvin did point out that in the history of theater, the moment we are going through is unparalleled. Even in the time of the plague in London, of Shakespeare's time, theater companies could go to the countryside, to the castles. Theater would happen. Also, it was never on such a global scale. So what we are experiencing now is something completely new. And we are deeply, deeply affected by this, and everybody, but especially theater artists who now in most countries still cannot go out, cannot work, or if they do, it's a low capacity seating in productions. Here in America, everything is still closed. I think the Met, the opera, just announced today they're going to be closed for another year. I think artists still haven't been paid. There's no theater open. The restaurants still are not open. They will open, I think, next week with 25% capacity. It's a disaster. It's a very big disaster for theater artists here in the US who have not supported in a way they are still supported in Europe or perhaps in other places. And the world, or as a matter of fact, in Canada. Not only Corona, the time of Corona is threatening and endangering what we do. Of course, also political circumstances, situations, climates, as we know so well here in the US, are changing what we thought perhaps is something we can always count on, the access to the arts, free access to the arts, as we have access to healthcare, access to education. And very, very dramatically, actually, concerning messages are coming out of Budapest in Hungary, a great, great country of theater. It was a great, great history. We use the Ferenc Molnars, and everything is a great tradition. We also film and theater has always worked hand in hand. And at the moment, that's significant, and the big school, the University of Theater and Film in Budapest, is going, or is forced to go, to changes, and there's a big resistance from student body, but also from faculty. So we're going to hear now what our colleagues are going through, or friends and artists in that time of Corona. That difficult time, very high numbers actually also in Hungary. It has been denied for a long time that it was actually a problem. But additionally, there's a devastating, I think, situation, and we're going to hear more. We have three representatives from the school with us. There's Andras Forgach. Andras, welcome with us. He's a professor at the University of Theater and Film in Budapest, an author, playwright, essayist, illustrator, and scriptwriter. He published also novels, and they've been translated in 19 languages. He is also someone who adapts classical work from literature, Flaubert, Hansum, and Dostoevsky, and many, many other works. He also, of course, writes original plays, a work of his own, and he worked on plays from Kleist, Beaumarchais, Genet, Wedekind, Horváth, Marlowe, Pinter in translations, and the great Peter Nadas, the great, great Hungarian writer, spoke parallel stories, I think it is. So he also put onto the stage. A representative from the students is with us. This is Hanna Milovits, and she is there in the bachelor program, and she's interested in applied theater, theater in education, and drama pedagogy with focus on community arts in theater. That's what so many of the theater artists talked about actually in the Segal talks, the focus of community and how to, you know, really reconnect to what perhaps has lost. She's an intern at the Káva Drama Theater Education Association and also studied acting. And then with us is the director or rector of the school at the moment, the great Laszlo Upor. He's a Hungarian dramaturg, literary translator, essayist, and a teacher. Everybody in Hungary knows him, and everybody in European theater knows him. He's a great communicator and a great example of Hungarian work. He has translated novels, non-fictions, and over 50 stage plays. He has published book on theater, film, and also contemporary circus, which is a very significant part. And we also had circus artists here in our talk. So he is director since 2019, and he has really worked also with everybody, as Andras did, you know, in Hungarian theater. So welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
So what time is it now in Budapest? And where are you, in Buda or in Pest?
I am in a little village not far from the town, so about 40 kilometers from Budapest, in my quarantine, as they used to say. So I very rarely move in the town, only when I have to defend the University of Laszlo and Hanna. I was once a guard there. There is this honorary thing standing before the building on the on a kind of balcony. So I'm in a little village. I don't know, Laszlo is in Pest, I think. Used to be in
Pest. I'm in Pest, which is the flat side of the two sides of Budapest. Hanna?
I'm in Pest. I'm at home. Yeah.
So Laszlo, we hear news, many, let us say Philip Arnaud, David Gotthard, and other news we get from Hungary. It is really, really, I think, a moment of deep crisis and deep concern. What's going on? Give us a little bit of insight. What are you doing there and what is happening? What has happened?
But I try and be brief, and I hope it will not be very very boring. So obviously, before the background of this global catastrophe, the virus, our problem is insignificant. But for us, Hungarian artists, theater and film and media artists, it really is very, very sad. Our school, the University of Theatre and Film Arts, Budapest, is probably the smallest universities in Budapest, but we made big waves, and we'll talk about those waves later. We are now in week 4 of a sit-in initiated by the students. On the last day of August, the leaders of this university stood up and left their positions. We all resigned. And I, as the academic leader of the school, the members of the Senate, or the heads of the departments, we all resigned from our positions with 1 month of leave. That means in 6 days we will officially be left. That same night, the night when we resigned, the students decided after a big street feast that they would occupy the building and never leave, and would never let strangers, in other words, people whom they don't want to let in, they would not let those people in. Now,
why did you resign? Why did you resign?
Yeah, exactly. I try to make this long story short, but basically, some universities in Hungary are forced to go through a transition from state-run universities to so-called private universities. Private universities controlled by foundations and boards of trustees, and there is nothing wrong with that in principle. But the way it is in Hungary, it's more like privatization of universities by the present government. because the Board of Trustees is made of members who are appointed for life, and normally people who are very close to the present government or the Prime Minister himself. That is one problem. The other problem is that the law that was implemented would let a very, very wide range of possibilities open as for the sharing of responsibilities and powers between the Senate, that is the parliament of the university, and the Board of Trustees on the other hand. Very briefly, what happened was in the deed of foundation of the university, the new deed of foundation of the university and the operational regulation, the new Board of Trustees made very clear that they want to grab all the rights of the Senate and keep it for themselves. In other words, the autonomy, the academic freedom that belongs to the university, that is a long tradition, not only in Europe, but all over the world. The university autonomy is fatally wounded. And that was the point when it became clear at the end of August. That was the point when the leadership decided we don't take part in this. We don't want to be part of that chain of power that would regulate the school via these Board of Trustees. So I hope this is clear. I don't want to go into details because it might.
If I understand right, could one say, let's say in our university, the Republican Party, for example, Trump would say it's going to be privatized now, the city university, and I will put party members who I appoint for lifetime in charge. They might not even have been in the university business, and the Senate or a council of universities will be shut down. It's actually a political party will be in charge of national educational institutions.
That's
yes,
right.
You must know also, excuse me,
Sure.
You must know that this is a part of a long process that began 10 years ago when they started their program, their cultural destruction program. And now 2 years ago, the Central European University was forced to leave Hungary. You may have followed this.
Yes.
Soros is the common denominator of all demoniac enemies, so they have something common with Trump. And also now the Academy of Sciences is under the heel of the government. So this is just part of a very, very strong push. I just want to say it's not only with the universities, it's a very consequential thing that they are doing since they are second time in power, the Fidesz government.
Mm-hmm. Hanna, how you are a student, you are the fourth week in strike or sitting. So tell us a little bit.
Well, first on Sunday night when we made this street carnival, which Laszlo talked about. When we went inside the building on the evening and we occupied the university, it was a very big day because that was the day when the Senate said that they could resign, that they quit. And that was this carnival, which was very uplifting, and a lot of people came and a lot of supporters came, and there was also music and dresses and speeches, so it was very, very good. And after that there was a storm which came and we went inside the building and we didn't come out. So there was a big countdown on midnight when we said that at the end of the countdown then we occupied the university.
I'm very curious, Hanna, because although I teach for 10 years now at the university, was this a spontaneous thing or did you think about it? Because this is a big discussion that this is made by hidden forces. What the students did was manipulated by Laszlo, by Usher, whoever. Was this a spontaneous thing or you just you had a plan, a master plan, how to do the things? I'm curious.
it definitely wasn't pushed by the teachers or the leaders of the university. This whole model change process started in the spring, and in the whole summer we made demonstrations and we made forums between the students, and we think about how could we represent ourselves and how could we protect our university, the autonomy of our university. So of course we thought about occupying the university too, but it wasn't a decision. So it was spontaneous, but also we spoke about that opportunity too.
Mm-hmm.
So students are sleeping, they're staying overnight, or they go in and out of the day. How is that? How at the moment? How is that? How does it look like?
Well, it's a little special because in this main building there's also the dorms. So there are also the dorms. So students live there too. But we also brought their tents. So people who are not living in the dorms also sometimes sleep inside the building. Yeah.
And that is my main worry in the times of virus. So like a good and bad mother, I keep warning them that we shouldn't play with fire. And of course they are very aware of this, and they initiate.
We have a very strict COVID protocol.
Strict regulations.
Which we made, and we also consulted with doctors and also with the leaders of the university. So we are very focusing on that. That's not.
But in the big picture, students put their life at risk to fight for a freedom of an academic freedom that has been there. I don't know how long was the university in existence. How long did it exist? In the current
155 years.
Yeah.
155 years. It's a big tradition that they are breaking now. This number is, and this institution really represents all these 155 years, what they want to destroy now. What I want to add to Hanna's thing is that now you can read on on Facebook and at other places that there are menacing groups now that want to attack the students physically. They want to occupy it. Some free groups of the government, some youngsters. So it's a very aggressive environment. When you are there in the street, it's a little street, Vasutca. It's a very happy feast. It's a wonderful place. A lot of conversations, very intelligent, very good conferences, teachers and students and everybody. A little bit outside, a little bit back, stepping back. Yes, let's say I'll finish now. Is the picture changes. So there are many dangers now. Not only ideological, but physical dangers. Yes, Laszlo, please, sorry.
No, I didn't want to interrupt. I just wanted to sign that at some point I would say that yes, there are threats, but they are very, sparse and stupid. I suppose they are, disguises, not real threats. But on the other hand, an extremely huge wave of solidarity is pouring from everyone, from everywhere in our society. And you must know that the Hungarian society in general became very skeptical, doesn't really respond to challenges, doesn't really raise solidarity. And somehow it has changed over the last 4 weeks, or over the last 4 months, actually, because the actions, the protests, the demonstrations began early spring. And of course, the peak is the sit-in. So the Hungarian society seems to open their eyes and react eventually, finally. And also the international community. I mean, hundreds and thousands of supporting letters and offerings from universities and institutions from outside. Hanna.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that you said that we are putting our lives on risk. I wouldn't say that. it sounds very heroic, but
I wouldn't like to think about that. No.
No, we
Please.
put on risk our education, and we put on risk our free time, and we do, it's a enormous big work to do that, to keep up the occupation, but I don't feel my life in danger, and nobody does, I think. And to the university, so a lot of people who came to us are supporters, so sometimes there are people who want to cause trouble or threat us, but they don't really very dangerous or aggressive yet.
Well, what I meant, sorry, that the communication in the governmental media is very, very hostile, very, very aggressive, mendacious, etc. And Budapest is an opposition town. So if you have a lot of people coming there with food, also I brought there some food, which my wife cooked for them, is a sign that Budapest is an opposition city. But the country itself, a lot of people are not interested in this conflict in my little village, which is not far away. And a lot of people eat the propaganda of the government. I just want to say this. So I'm very happy that I saw with my own eyes how people spontaneously go there and help the students and talk there. And this is a wonderful event. It's a historical event, as Laszlo beautifully phrased in his departing or opening speech. I don't know, because he gives now these speeches, that it's a historical moment, and it is. But the situation is very precarious, because this is a strong government with a very strong popular support. And we must know that. So let's not speak about all Hungarians are supporting or many. Most of the Hungarians are not interested. I mean, in the country, not in Budapest. And the government is very, very strong in their will to do their program, which he already 20 years ago declared in his usual yearly speeches, which he holds.
Mm-hmm. Laszlo.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, and I hope I don't repeat myself, is compared to the usual darkness or uninterestedness in public matters, this time we experienced something that we haven't over the last several years, even in case of much bigger institutions like the Central European University or even the Academy of Sciences. They are much, much more important than our school. But for some reason, the actions of our school, the way the students act, and of course the way the teaching staff acts, raised empathy and sympathy we have not experienced before. And what we failed to mention so far, the students organize wonderful, wonderful public events that are extremely popular. And I hope Hanna will tell you about those events and actions too.
I didn't want to talk about that, but I can talk about that later too. But I wanted to say to what you said, that it means a lot to us, and I think it's a very big achievement that on Tuesday we went to the countryside to other Hungarian universities to meet with other students from other universities, and we made forums, and they started to organize themselves to support us on one side, and the other side they want to find solutions for their problems too. So they also started actions, or just speak about what the problems or the good things on their university.
I must add that the students are magnificent. They have press conferences which last 3 minutes, and in 3 minutes they can say everything. And they beautifully designed the whole building, which became a symbol in Hungary, an art symbol, etc., with these stripes, red and white stripes. It's marvelous what they are doing. The whole picture is darker, of course, but it's a wonderful thing to observe as a sympathizer. Mm-hmm. But there is, I must add, as a realist, Hungarian writer, there is a lot of indifference also. The
Mm.
incredible flowing of the international support is really, I never experienced this till now, but we know the limits of it.
Mm.
We know the limits of it in authoritarian systems.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about the school. If I'm right, I mean, even when I was a student, especially the film school, but also the theater school in Budapest, it was regarded of the highest level. There's Beaconsfield in London, and the Berlin Film Academy, but the Budapest School for, especially when it came to craft in film, this is where people went, the camera people, others, but also for directing, great students. So tell us a bit, and also in theater, you know, I think most probably every significant director or designer people came through that school. Tell us, what is the philosophy of the school that for so long operated? What are your visions, your ideals? How did you teach theater and film?
Well, I think part of our tradition is change. I mean, we've been with this tradition, but the constant change is also part of the tradition. And I know it sounds very general,
Mm-hmm.
but it goes from generation to generation. We keep including the new talents in the teaching staff. So, you know, teachers would, students would become teachers and then professors, etc., etc. That's not a philosophy. That's just part of the tradition. But what may be interesting for American and international audiences, the education is very much practice-based. There is very little academic studies are just a very, very tiny portion of what we do. The majority, 90% of the teachers are people from the profession, the highest level theater people and film people and television media people teach at the university. And practice is the ground and the top of our education. Everything derives from practice of theater, film, and media, and everything is fed back to practice. We have very, very small groups of students, 5, 6 to 15 people in a group. We call them classes, just like in little schools. And the master, 1 or 2 or 3 masters, would go with this class for the whole duration of the studies. And of course, she or he would invite other professors, other teachers, and she or he would handpick the other teachers and decide most of the curricula. But it's basically the master disciple relationship. Yeah, the master-disciple relationship, which is the basis for the whole education. But the students also merge. So students of one field would work together with students of the other field, and from day one they would work on film and theater productions. And most of the exams are either preparations for exams or productions themselves. I don't know if it gives you a clear picture. I hope so.
Yeah.
It's very familiar, very close-knit community, very familiar relationships, fatherly, brotherly relationships. It's a very intimate community, with great artists as teachers, but who are also there physically. I had my students now, which I was teaching last time in the film school, they got their diplomas now this year. So I finished now, in fact, teaching at the university as a class master, whatever you call it. And they are calling me like I would be their father. It's all finished. They come to consult me now. It's a very intimate, very intense relationship with your students. And it's also part of the big tradition, and this is now, what's happening now is trying to destroy this very sensitive fabric of relationships. And I'm a little bit afraid that they will succeed even if they don't succeed, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, when you get a message on Messenger at 3 in the morning, hey prof, we've been listening to the music you showed us the other day during class, and we've been listening to it 3 times this morning, and that message would, you know, come to your phone at 3 in the morning. That kind of relationship.
Very typical.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine how appointees of a political party would even be able to create such an identity, such a passion, also, you know, for a craft, and also have the know-how. Hanna, for you, why did you go to this school, and, you know, instead of something else? And what are you afraid? What will change if the plans go through?
I went to this school because I wanted to work in the field of theater. First, I thought I would be an actor, but then it came around that it's not the way for me. But I also wanted to work with people, or I also thought about that I would be a teacher, but that wasn't a place for me neither. So I searched for a place where I can mix education and theater together. And I heard one of my friends that she's on this bachelor program. So I applied, and that's why I'm here. And I'm very happy because I very find my place, I think. So I fear that I lost this. So I have very good classmates. The field when I will work in Hungary, it's very new and inspiring, and the people are very open. And my teachers are like also like partners for me. So I love this relationship, like we were colleagues from the beginning. So in my faculty, the relationship between teachers and students aren't like that what Andras and Laszlo told, that this parent relation, but the partner and the colleague relation. Yes.
No, I did mean that I am a father figure, but they use us also as, you know. Yeah, there was a big discussion in the press of the government. They said the children should listen, because Hungary hallgató means the listener, the student. The word for student in Hungarian is listener, hallgató. So they said they should be silent and listen. This is what the government spokespeople said. And of course, I with my students, we are friends, of course. But the father thing is when they come to ask advice, to seek advice about life problems, not about professional problems. But to get into this school, you must know it's a big prestige in Hungary to get into this school. There is, I don't know, Laci will know how many times more people want to get in that they can take. How many? What's the number, Laci?
Well, it's, the average is 50 plus times. So 1 in every 50 or 60 or 80 applicants would get in school, depending on what profession. I mean, actors, directors, 80 times more applicants than what we could admit.
It's a hugely popular institution in Hungary.
Hanna?
I forgot to say the main thing which I fear of losing is that I think in our university everyone is so the teachers are interested in the students about who they really are, what do they want, what do they see the world, and then everybody is constantly asking questions about the world, and not say You know, people don't say that the Hungarian people like that or the words like that, black and white, but we always ask questions and always search for truth and always,
But
want to
isn't
know
that
this big world around us. And I fear that with this new system, people would want to tell me what I have to think,
but
and
isn't
not
that
ask what I think.
isn't that normal? Isn't that the basic thing of education, that you ask questions instead of giving statements?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the normal way.
What I want to add also to the whole situation, it came out through the analysis of lawyers and legal people that the government is moving, or this committee, or I don't know, curatorium, how they call it, is moving on a totally unlawful territory. They don't know what they are doing. They are in such a hurry that they are doing things which are not lawful at all. It's not in the original law which they accepted in the parliament. They were so eager to occupy this university. Laszlo can give you more details about this, but I read all the stuff about it every day, of course, what they publish, is that they are totally unlawful now in many things what they are doing with the university. Isn't that true, Laszlo?
Yeah, but I'm not sure we should go into details. It's actually very boring and depressing. But Andras is right. Now, as the day comes closer, when the leaders are gone, I mean, in a few days' time, and they need to find a solution for this. And instead of going the rightful way, they decided to break the law, which is also very depressing, and we'll see what will happen. But I don't think we should bore you with the details.
Mm-hmm. So,
and I'm sure we can tell you loads of very bad things about ourselves.
So basically, there is even the legal ground on which the government is taking these actions in the name of the government. They are not sound. They are not approved, and it's not the role, in that sense, of the government to privatize art schools. It's a shocking development. And as Andras said, news we heard from Hungary, festivals shut down, international festivals, or just not given any more funding, exchange of artistic leaders, of theaters. I think one politician even made a comment, we don't want those riffraff plays from New York anymore. We have enough Hungarian homeland writers, there was the exchange of leaders of universities, directors, as you also pointed out. So it's like a whole a machinery working in cutting down discourses of flowers of different colors on the Hungarian fields. What is interesting, and I agree what Laszlo said, the big institutions also have been taught, and the great Soros Foundation, who we think is doing very good work. And of course, it's controversial. People have different opinions, but this is what they do. And it is a significant and also successful, and is a great representation of Hungary, of Hungarian thinking in the world. But that theater seems to be getting the attention. We had in our Segal talks an Indian playwright, Abhishek Mumbar, who said, I have a small theater company, I do small plays. And I wonder, you asked me if it's important what we do. Well, the government thinks so. They shut us down, they censor our plays. He says, big movie theaters with perhaps much more critical themes, nobody cares. TV shows with millions of viewers don't seem to have that effect, that deep connection. So I think it's a good sign that it does matter, and that some part of Hungarian population seems to be understanding this is going too far. Something is wrong. And it is truly shocking that in a tradition of enlightenment of 150 years of openly teaching of the arts, where you ask questions instead of giving answers, that actually all great art should give not answers, they should ask better questions. But tell us a bit, who came out of this school? Tell us a little bit of the success stories, or we hear a lot of the Hungarian filmmakers, the documentary makers, the long hour films that are so admired. And but is there a style that you have created at that school?
Well, just I think you should remind our listeners to a few names, like the great cinematographers Vilmos Zsigmond and Laszlo Upor. Graduated at our school a long time ago, but also Ildikó Enyedi, whose work won a lot of prizes and attention, and then Géza Rörig, who played the lead in Shaw's Son, etc. For the theater artists, you wouldn't know loads of names, but maybe even people here would know Tamás Osher's name, who directed several plays that traveled the world. As I said, and of course younger people too, but you may not know them, so there's no point in naming them. But there was a long tradition of the Stanislavski-based acting method, and it has slowly changed and gradually changed. So one basis of the actors training is the Stanislavski method, but also the musical and physical training is very, very important. And over the last several years, we started we thread on new fields as physical theater. The puppetry is fairly new in our school. Of course, not in our art, not in our theater, but in the school. About 15 or 20 years, physical theater training, which is very, very, very strong and very, very successful, goes only back 10 years. We also experimented with making up new curricula for combined studies, like parallel classes would have the same basis education, but from day one they would work together on productions, etc., etc. So I think all in all, there is no general style. It all depends on the artists who are invited to teach. The theater style is still much closer to the realistic Stanislavski-based, etc., but not so exclusively as before. Especially the younger generation of the 40s and 30s. Now they do other styles. And as for the film, it's the Hungarian school, I suppose, has always been in the forefront. It was one of the flagships of cinema education. So I'm actually quite proud of the school, and I know it sounds very cheesy, and what else should this man say? But I really mean it, especially because the infrastructure of the school is very, very poor, and the school is very much underfinanced. The international success of our students is really fascinating. Just one example, every single year there's a student Oscar competition, and the only school in the world, I repeat, the only school that had films nominated for student Oscar 3 years in a row is our school. And in one of the 3 years, the student also won the prize. So that is not just our pride, but it also shows that there are really,
Yeah. No, this school is for real. There are great schools also in America, but as some say, perhaps also on every campus, all of a sudden the theater department came up or a film department. This school that you are leading is an exceptional jewel, I think, in experimenting with arts education and also in the field of practice to have real results, and also your students, your work in the field afterwards, and also as a sign of acknowledgement and respect, they come back and teach. It's a living organism. I think I once was and visited the school also when I was still a student, and later on I was highly impressed. Even as you point out, it seemed always underfunded compared to other institutions in Western Europe who had, I would say, a much more available. Here is a question.
Can I say just one thing?
Yeah.
In Bucharest, the film school is much better funded than in Hungary. So yeah. It was also a governmental decision here to Hungary it out. They started to underfinance it year after year. They squeezed the money out of this university. Yeah. So it's much poorer than it could be normally.
Yeah, something. Country should be really proud of. Hungary that has contributed so much to the history of modern art, to modernity. And it's a great disappointment, I think, for the world that that tradition seemed to be endangered after the opening of the wall, that in the contrary, the clock seems to go backwards. Yes, Laszlo.
But we must add, and I don't want to open a new topic, but I must add that the board that was appointed, they claim and they promise that they would bring lots of money. They would, build a wonderful infrastructure, and everything will be just wonderful and beautiful. But what they actually say with other words at other moments is quite frightening. So they promise to make everything shiny and happy, but it is very much contradicted by their other statements, because three people on this board have actually behaved in a very, very hostile way much before they were appointed. So that is also,
No, but their strategy is, this government strategy is to pour the money. They think that they can buy everything with money. They can buy talent with money. They can buy future with money. So I was visiting now a few days ago MOME, that's the other university that went through the same process, but not in 4 months, but in 7 years. So it's a big difference, this privatization of the system. It's a beautiful campus. But of course, if you go behind the surface, they have taken a lot of liberties and a lot of autonomy also there, but much more gradually. Here we saw that there is a frontal attack by one person who was hurt, who is frustrated, who wants revenge. And this was a frontal attack, very badly timed. In other spheres of literature, I'm a writer, and they created a very sophisticated scholarship, so to speak, named after a young writer who died with 50 years, János Térei, which they very generously threw out to the writers' community without looking at their worldviews, without judging they are liberals or conservatives or nationalists. And it functioned quite well. In a way, they could sow division between so to speak, the liberal writers, where I'm a member of. So I'm sure that they will pour a lot of money into a wonderful campus, which will be dead. That's my very stark opinion, culturally, artistically. That will be a beautiful building, half dead. Let's be optimistic, not fully dead, because for my country, I hope that. I just wanted to add this.
Hanna?
I'm listening.
Yeah, it is quite, it is stunning that in Europe, in the times we live in, that these things do happen. We do believe that arts are free or they are not free. There's not a lot in between. There's freedom of research, freedom of the arts, freedom of opinion, freedom of speech, or there's not. And one cannot have gradual transitions. And it's like, as someone said, with pregnancy, or you are pregnant or you're not. And the same is with the arts. Are they free? Can they do? And their job is to criticize. I remember the dramaturg from the Volksbühne Berlin, Sebastian Kaiser, who said, we were the most radical left-wing theater. We did whatever we attacked the city of Berlin, the politicians. But ultimately, we proved their point that art is free and the city is working, you know. So he said, so ultimately we proved, you know, the system and that it worked, but it was a real exchange, they felt. You know, they really fulfilled their mission to talk about immigration, to talk about the devastation that this neo-capitalism brought into the city, the changing of neighborhoods, and also the loss of utopian ideas, you know, that happened when the wall opened, and so many people who also walked on the streets, who demonstrated on the east side also for a new vision, that this was felt that was ironed over. So if they would be smart, they would say, do whatever you want. You just show that we let you do, and we still do. So why that insecurity? Why are they so obsessed to rule and regulate a tiny film school in the heart of Central Europe? And I know you have big supporters. I think Salman Rushdie, Helen Mirren, Kate Blanchett, people came out to bat for you, who know the importance of education, of good education, of an open and free and also affordable education. How much is it for a student? How much do you pay for a year to go to that university?
We don't pay at all, because in Hungary you have 5 years, or no more, 6 years. The country, the states pays your education for 6
Basically,
6
maybe.
years.
But sorry, I must.
But
add, if you run out of these years, and some of the students have already graduated in other universities, then they have to pay, and for a semester it's, I don't know how many dollars is that. I only know in forints. I'm sorry, maybe I can count it.
100.
A lot of money, you have to pay a lot
in a
of
Hungarian
money.
average, it's a lot.
Yeah, still here in America in private universities, which often offer really also good education, but it's $50,000-$60,000 1 year, you know. And of course, you know, private university, when they privatize, people will start to charge admissions. Things do change. I would like to ask you guys the other way around. If, let's say, the government would say, listen, we have that money, we want to have the new shiny buildings and invest in the equipment. What would you do? Let's say you would be asked to create that new thing as a student or something. What would you do? What's your vision? What do we need in that time of Corona, where there's time to reflect and to think? What do you feel should be done? What would you guys do if you get big resources, the ones you don't have?
We definitely need a new campus, because the one we have right now, it's melting down and it's too small. So first, I think we need a new campus.
No, it's a fact that this school, with a long and good tradition of 155 years, have never had a campus as such. We
have separate buildings.
We have separate buildings, and none of them was built for educational purposes or theatrical or, you know, film purposes.
Sorry, one was a temple, the other was a brothel. That's very important, and the third was a private villa for a very rich aristocratic family. These are the 3 buildings, different buildings, not far from each other, but you know, and you still have those little rooms in the brothel, and you still have those temple-like features in the main building where Vasutsa, where the things happen now.
No, you really must be in love with the whole spirit of the school, and in love with the education to keep up the spirit, because it really is kind of poor. Whenever we have visitors, meetings or workshops, I always pray for them to leave before they need to go to the Louvre. Because the facility, I mean, I'm joking, of course, but the facilities, the whole infrastructure is very. But this is not the time to, you know. anyway, if we have the money, yes, we would build a campus. If we have enough money, we would hire all kinds of people who should teach. But I don't think we would ever give up on our ideas of the academic freedom and the freedom of art. And I think this is what's going on now, that there are promises, everything will be wonderful if you give in. But people don't seem to want to give in.
What they imagine now, these people, that they, some of their actors and directors will teach the classes parallelly to the original teachers. But this is the case which Villon, the great French poet, said, that the fly in the milk. You know, if a fly is in the milk, you can't drink the milk. Now it's the revenge of the mediocre, because what happened in this university is that they invited always the best people, the possible best people to teach. It took a long time. They invited also Attila Vidnyansky, the guy who is the crusader to destroy this institution. They invited him, and he participated not very fully, but he did also some little work there. He could have done it from the inside if he was really interested. What's very important here is that the best people should teach. They should, the university should keep this aspect, this intimacy, this friendship or master-student relationship, and always be open to the new things. And this is what happened under Rasher, and this is what happened under Lotzi, and this is what happened under the rector who was before him, that he was always an open eye to invite a new face, a new idea. And in the last 15 years, we had a lot of new courses and a lot of new people coming in. It's an open institution with the best people.
So just to a serious answer to your question, Frank, if we would have the money and the time, we would go through all the discussions, debates, negotiations you need before you go through a change, because no one denies we need changes. And we would be extremely happy to have the time, maybe the money too, but the time and the quiet space to think through and negotiate and debate how this school should change. What we are robbed now is exactly the time and the space where you could have a debate on all this, because I'm sure those people, the people who impose the bill on us, they have wonderful ideas. They may have wonderful ideas, but by throwing a hand grenade in before they enter the building, they stopped us from negotiating. They stopped us from accepting their views, their ideas, etc., etc. In an interview, I gave a stupid metaphor, but I'm sorry, I repeat this. There's a huge difference between lovemaking and rape. And what has been happening now is much closer to rape than lovemaking.
Mm-hmm. Do you all feel that the time of Corona, that it happens now, is that a coincidence? Do you feel they did this now because it might be easier?
Yeah, absolutely. It's easier, but it's a program that they are doing consequentially. You must see that too. It's one step on a long road through the destruction of this, what we call democracy, Western democracy. Hungary is an authoritarian country today, where the prime minister thinks that if a theater is playing Richard III, it's about him. It means that it's an authoritarian society. When I was a young dramaturg and my theater wanted to play the Merchant of Venice, it was forbidden because the guy in the party thought it's about him. He's Shylock because he was a Jew. And now we are in the same situation, absolutely a very same situation. Coronavirus is a very good pretext everywhere, not only in Hungary, to do many things. We see the international press about this. Well, they are absolutely perfect in this manipulative use of a crisis situation. They know that.
I think Corona came very handy, but I don't think that initiated anything. What is more important is that we will have elections in 2022, and whatever radical changes this government want to get through with, they should very soon. They will definitely not initiate radical changes in the year before the elections. So I suppose
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that, Laci. Sorry to discuss it. These people are radicals. They are absolutely not conservatives. They are very, very aggressive people. They have their willpower. I say plural, but it's one person. And he's not, doesn't take care into anything into consideration. Just think about the destruction of this religious order, of which the leader is the guy who baptized the children of Orban. He totally destroyed it, like in a Shakespeare play. He doesn't care about this. I think it's over sophisticated thinking.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You may be right, Andras, but I know that Hanna should go in a few minutes, so we should give her some room.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hanna, what is the perspective of the students? So in 2 days, let's say that nothing will happen. Will students go to courses? Will they do them under protest? What's your prediction? Will the sit-in go on indefinitely till next year?
We will keep on fighting until until we don't get what we want. So I can say that, but I can't really say in what will happen in a month, because I have no idea and nobody does. In October there will be a big change, because the leaders will so the Laszlo, please help. So they wouldn't stay here as leaders, because
October the 1st, it will change.
Yeah.
We'll be left in less than a week. I mean, officially and finally.
Yes.
But
So
there will be a time to make another. So there will be another bigger conflict, because someone has to be a leader and he or she will come from outside. So there will be an interesting time because we won't get them inside, or let them inside. Yeah.
How can students, let's say we have listeners or campuses in New York or New Orleans or Los Angeles, they want to show solidarity, they go to your website. Is there a place they can, how can they find you guys?
In English? I don't. On Facebook, we have a Facebook page, which is linked to the student government. Yes, and we share there everything, sometimes in English too, but mostly in Hungarian.
So what's the Facebook address? Is there?
I write in.
Yes,
In the chat.
Yeah, when you leave, we'll still have your, instead of your name, the address. So what's going to happen to you guys if you're out of a job? Is that, are you then officially still part of faculty, or are you being thrown out? What's the situation?
Let's see.
Well, I decided, just like the majority of the leaders, that I would resign as a leader, but stay as an educator, teacher, as long as it makes any sense, as long as I don't have to give up on basic values, because this is my responsibility to go on teaching my students. I cannot take part in that power system, and I will not pretend that I will accept the regulations that are imposed on us. But as for the teaching, I try and keep up my freedom. If that is impossible, or if something even more horrendous is imposed on the school, then of course course, I believe as a teacher as well. And I suppose most of my colleagues think the same way. But I must add that quite a few of our old professors that have been part of the tradition for 20, 30, 40 years, they decided to go once the list of the board members was published. They decided they cannot collaborate with these people who were so hostile and so unjust to our community of students and teachers. But in brief, I try and stay as a teacher, and we'll see.
I have to go now, I'm sorry. I wrote the Facebook address in the chat, and if someone wants to get in touch with us, then they can write us in English too. Yeah. There's a group of people who deals with the international press.
Or maybe put the address instead of your name, as a name, so we see it, and leave your screen on if possible. I'm not sure if everybody can access the chat from the outside. So Andras, what's with you? So bye-bye, Hanna, and really thank you for taking the time. Where are you going? What are you doing, if we may ask?
To the doctor.
Okay, good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Well, in my case, it's very different from Laszlo's. I was 10 years, I teach certain classes before, but in the last 10 years, I had 2 classes themselves. One class was a theater class, the other class was a film script class. So 5 years, 5 plus 5 years. And I resigned from the job. They asked me 2 years ago if I want to continue or I want to be part. No, for private reasons. I don't like to be part of institutions. That's my personal problem. This is a wonderful institution, and my colleagues asked me, I have a wonderful colleague who's who's also a colleague of Laci Gábor Német, a wonderful Hungarian writer. He asked me, if I ask you to hold classes, will you come? He must define it very precisely what he wants from me, for me to go there, but it has nothing to do with politics in this case. But I'm certain, I use this metaphor, fly in the milk, of Mr. Willon. When the fly is in the milk, and in the next classroom, somebody teaches things that I totally disagree with, I don't think my words have the same meaning. So I have very good friends who teach on. I have very good class masters. Attila Janis, who is a fighter for this university, he's going on with his class. I'm sorry for them, in fact, if you ask my real opinion, if this happens, if the worst scenario happens. I think it's a very bad situation when in one classroom there is a nationalist, conservative Christian teacher, and in the other classroom there is a teacher whom they call liberal, whatever. It's impossible. It doesn't work that way, and this never worked that way. They systematically, and of course, Laci is right in one respect that of course they are sometimes looking at the elections. Okay, some calculations, but they are systematically destroying the fabric of cultural life as it is. What they call liberal, okay, that's just a word, The cultural life as it is, it's a very sophisticated texture and fabric, and they intentionally try to tear it apart with quite a lot of success. Sorry to give this pessimistic and dark scenario.
No, I think you are both right. It's right to stay. It is absolutely right to say and to stand up. And the words as the liberal or whatever, the arts teacher will be more worthwhile, but it's also absolutely right to say, no, I can't. It reflects, the multiplicity of opinions but it's just, it is devastating to think that I'm also at the university, or my colleagues would have to face such choices that a political party will put in people who control arts education, or in general education at universities. It's no longer about credits, about achievements and about excellence, but it's about a connection and a party and an ideology. And as we all know, ideology makes for bad theater, ideology makes for bad films, ideology makes for bad poems and for bad novels. And if you teach the arts, you cannot do the opposite of what it is all about. It's an incredible warning sign, but maybe, and often, the theater is the first to close down, but often When there is
First to open.
resistance, theater also is the first where it manifests. So it is important what you do, and I think the world is watching. The New York Times, I think, also dedicated an article to you, which is very rare. Normally, the New York Times doesn't write anything about education. It's the kiss of death. Whenever we try to get something and say, listen, we write about universities, we could write all day about Columbia and you guys. But so it is really the seriousness of this situation, I think, is acknowledged, especially history of 150 years and with very dark times in between, actually. So this change is significant. And we hope that out of that confusion, out of this crisis, something good will come up, but we don't know. It's part of that time of Corona. I think that uncertainty, we really do not know. And it's unusual for us, especially in the Western world, not to know what is going to happen and what will be, but there's a serious reason for concern, and we admire you all that you take a stand and that you are in the middle of a fight that for us somehow seems far away and not imaginable, but perhaps it's around the corner. Also, we do not know, or perhaps it will be a warning sign, and it won't be. But as you know, also in America, also in other countries in Europe, you know, in Poland and others, there are forces at work, you know, that deny that what worked, you know, is why.
Yeah, I mean, we invented Trump much before America did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Bad joke, but.
What do you think? What is your prediction for the Hungarian society? Do you think this is a phase that a country like Hungary that has been suppressed so long in the Iron Curtain, where I do remember seeing music groups did Hungarian music as a form of resistance, listening to Rolling Stones, but wearing Hungarian traditional clothes, you know, as a sign of resistance against also the censorship of suppression, but that perhaps Hungary says we need to experience a national moment of ourselves. But do you think it will pass, or do you think this is just the beginning of a very long time
That's what I think, yes. That's what I think, what you're laughing. We are at the beginning of a historical shift, a change. These are symptoms, these are signs. We have an ideal which is looking in the past. I mean, the so-called liberal democracy, which is, I put it in quotation marks, that's already a problem. And we don't see the new forms of society which are building up before our eyes. So you need new strategies, new ideas for new relationships. And I think this will go on now for quite a long time, because they are quite well stabilized through all kinds of international relationship between, you know, Trump called Orban a few days ago, and Bolsonaro calls Putin, and Putin calls Erdogan, etc. This is a huge story, and Hungary is very much part of it, even if Hungary is too small. So in this respect, I'm very pessimistic. On the other hand, this event around the school in Hungary, the theater and film school in Hungary, is a wonderful thing. And we know that in history, sometimes 1 week can mean more than 20 years or 50 years in its symbolical meaning. And it gives a very strong example and paradigm for the future. But if to answer concrete, I think this will go on now for a certain time. We are not at the end of it now. They are very well entrenched, so to speak, yeah.
You know, I'm very frustrated and depressed and pessimistic and skeptical, whatever, you name it, out of the experience of the last many years. Because as you may remember, a few years ago, we discussed that very shadowy image of Hungary being deeply divided as a society in every little field. And that's the making of the people who are now governing this. But it didn't start with them being in the government. It began many years ago, at least 20 years ago, when they decided that the best marketing tool of any kind of idea, the best marketing tool of any economic or other ideas is to put everything in a very simple way and boil down everything to yes and no questions. And this is what's been happening, and this is how the whole society is divided into people who would say yes to this question and people who would say no to that question. And yes and no questions are basically about, are you with me or against me? But all this said, in my opening speech last year, I was on the opening ceremony of the school is always in our theater space, and I was standing on the stage, which doesn't happen very often to me because I'm not an actor. I was standing there talking to the people, and suddenly I said, listen, we are in an institution of 155 years, and this year, the very first time in our history, we accepted and start teaching people who were born in the 21st century. And I think we still cannot fathom whatever that means, that our students are people who were born in the 21st century. So what I mean is we cannot predict how these young people will change the face of the universe.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's a formative experience to be part of, really thinking through essentially what is it, what we want and what do we don't want. And we're coming closer to the end. Give us a little bit, maybe an idea what Hungarian theater directors, filmmakers, poets, novelists, who should we listen to? What should we read? Do you have some names for us in that time of Corona, or music or composers? What is coming out of Hungary where you think, please pay attention?
Well, right now, New York Times was writing about a film of a student of Lili Horváth, who is a student of this university, who was at the Toronto Film Festival, and New York Times yesterday put him in the 10 best films of that festival. So I think a lot of things are happening. Theater is, of course, half dead now in Hungary, but and film industry is a bit in the frigidaire. You know, they plan things, but they don't actually start to shoot them. Enyedi Ildikó just finished an adaptation of a very big Hungarian novel, which will come out as soon as possible. So
sorry, you may not remember her name, but she is the director of On Body and Soul. Ildikó Enyedi, the person Andras just mentioned. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. High 20th century on Body and Soul. She's internationally very, very renowned. So, I mean, I don't think that theater productions will go around, but I mean, some wonderful novels were published this year in Hungary, which are translated into many languages.
And again, music that travels easily, and the great composer Péter Ötvös, he produces a new opera basically every year, and most of them are performed in European cities as well as in New York. So I suppose if you have never heard Péter Ötvös, you should keep your ears open for him. Mm-hmm. And you know, the easiest way to learn about Hungarian culture is just jump on a plane and come.
Good.
Experience it for yourselves.
Good. Yeah. So I really do also encourage people to go to Hungary. It's a significant country. It's a beautiful country, I think, if I'm right. A bit also modeled after Paris as a city, and the great Eiffel lecture, I think, made the market. It's a great place to be. It's also a great place to see theater and art and museums. I think it's important that there's also an international presence in that country. So Andras and Laszlo, really thank you for joining us. This was an important update. We needed to hear from you, and our thoughts are with us. Our hearts are with us. This is an important struggle. It stands for much, much more than just your school, and that's why we all have to pay attention to it. I hope you also will come. Laszlo, I hope we will meet again. We had great conversations when we met, so I hope you both will come to New York. I will be back in Budapest. Follow our Segal talks, where it's also about, you know, what do we do? What has already changed? What will change? what is significant and how does the political really matter. And in your case, of course, it is so openly visible and it's a significant development where we really have to pay attention to do everything that such things do not happen. We have to support the arts. We have to support the great institutions that create education, especially if it's working well, like in your school, if it's a success story. Everybody would be thrilled to have 3 Oscar nominations in a row. Nobody would shut you down and say it has to be privatized. It's shocking. So thank you all, and you are great representatives of a Europe, you know, we all admire and we look up to. So I hope that this also was inspiring to you. I hope that you know that the international community is on your side, and please do stay in touch, stay safe also in the time of Corona. I am worried actually, even if Hanna said no, it's not. Students getting together in tents, and in times of Corona, it is putting their life at risk somewhere deep down. They also know that. But they still think they have to do it, like Black Lives Matter or demonstrations where people know they put their lives at risk when they go out on the street chanting, but they say things are so hard, so difficult, so unjust, we have to do that. Tomorrow we hear from Beirut. We have Sahar Asaf back and Dima Mata, who I spoke to a week before actually that big devastating explosion happened. We tried to contact them in between, but it wasn't possible. So we get an update and also see what can we do. And also you guys, let us know, how the support could be done for you, what is helpful. And I hope you will stay connected to us and one day come, and hopefully soon we will see a Hungarian production, maybe at that festival that we are putting together, the New York International Festival of the Arts in the summer of 2022. Think about it, find partners, and so you can have some of the great work represented. I remember Tomasz Fodor's production, of Electra, which I saw, and Krekator, Andreas Tompa's work, and so much brilliant work that came out of there. So, and it needs to be seen. It enriches our world, and like musicians listen to world music for their own music, and the same is in theater. So thank you, and a good night to Budapest.
Thank you for your attention and your interest in our case. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Bye-bye, Andras.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Stay safe. Thanks to HowlRound for hosting us, for Vijay and Thea to make this possible again, to Andy Lerner here at the Segal Center, and to you all listeners really taking time out of your day. There's also so much out there on content, but it is important, and what happens there concerns us all. So really, thank you. We need great audiences, as we do need great theaters and great films, but it's ultimately about the audience, and make sure that wherever you are, that such things won't happen. And we all have to see it's a fight. It's a serious fight to keep what we have. All the best, and see you soon. Bye-bye.